Hey Willow, are we gonna work on a radio today? Are we gonna do that today? We gotta tear that radio down. We got it out of the cabinet now, so we gotta tell them how to work on it. You gonna help me? Willow, come on, help me. I don't wanna have to do it all by myself. Are you gonna make me do it all by myself? Huh? What do you got to say? All right, are you looking for Cooper? Where's Cooper? Cooper's not out here. All right, well, you have a good day, Willow. Thank you. Can you look a day? Duke? Yeah, say thank you. Into 2 videos, we're going to show you how to analyze the chassis after you get it tore down on the counter, and make sure that it's a viable chassis for you to actually even start restoration on. So just pay attention. I'm going to make this short, but when we get into it, you'll be able to see a few things that we look at before we actually even start on a recap, because sometimes it might not be worth it if you do. So this will be hopefully instructional for you. Thank you. Okay, I apologize for the horrible filming job that I did outside. I'm a little more in my comfort zone in here, but you know, that's no excuse. I got to get better at it. A couple of things of note. When you first put a chassis on, what I do is I take a lot of pictures, and I have a set way I take the pictures. I always start at the front, and I do a front shot like this, get the whole chassis so you can kind of see what you started with. Then I do an overhead shot like that, and then I do a close-up front because you want to mark how your dial is, because you see all the damages that you got to your dial here, which we can touch that up. You want to, you know, verify that your needle is in fact good now that you got it in front of you. You want to take a picture of your switching system here and all your controls, make sure nothing's broke or hanging. This is where you're inspecting all this. As you can see a lot better now. See all this wiring, just me moving that little bit, it just breaks off. All these wires, all of them will be replaced on here. So really, it doesn't matter what I do with this, but the bad part about it is, I'm gonna have to figure out some way to mark each one of these little pins where they're at and cut the wire, and that way I can get this thing not from hanging and flopping around while we're working on it. And I'll show you how to do that later when we get to it. Right now we're just doing an overview. Here's the other side. Nice thing about the other side is that you have pins here that you can pull out, and as long as you mark them, I use a numbering system. Like however I want to do it, I put a little piece of blue. I use the blue painter's tape right here, and I'll put like a little number 1 on painter tape here, and then 1 on that, and that'll be 2, and that'll be 2, and that'll be 3. That way you can tell, and you can get this block out of your way by just unplugging those. So we'll do that here in a minute too. But anyway, I do my front shot, I do my overhead shot, I do my close-up shots of the important things on the front, and then I rotate the thing to the side, because you're wanting to get all the, especially if you're working for somebody else doing their radio, you want to make sure that you pre-show any damages that were already there. Okay, so I get one from the side, nothing really going on here. You got your 2 little trimmers right here, but other than that, there's nothing really going on. And then I always take, I'm talking about actual taking photos, not video, but just get photos above. You want to get a photo, overhead shot of your pinning capacitor. You want to get an overhead shot of your dial cord, which is non-existent on this radio. It's gone. Normally it would be running right along this thing right here. So you want to get an overhead shot of that. Normally your light kit fell out, but it sits in here, and you want to actually get a picture of the lights up top, and all those cords are going to have to be replaced too. You can see that they're the same rubber wiring. That's what these button radios are. That's why everybody hates them. But anyway, I take one from the side and then one from the top, and then details of the little things from this side. because you wouldn't believe what a different angle will show you. Like, and I go all the way around the radio. I do the back the same way. I take one straight shot of the back like this, then I do one overhead shot of the back like that. And I've already done the detail on the tuning capacitor when I did the sides, so I really don't need that. But then I also, while I'm back here, I take a close-up of where the plug went in. I take a close-up where the antennas go in. And then I take a close-up of where the speaker goes in. And I also take a close-up of the data plate. There's one more thing that's real important. I told you on these copper chassis, your model number. And look at it right there, 10S587. And so we want to make sure we take a picture of that too, okay? So then we rotate it down to this end. And I do the same thing. I do a side shot, and then I do an overhead shot. And that covers pretty much the chassis itself. The next thing you want to do is you want to turn it up on its end, and you want to put it on the transformer down side. So make sure the transformer is on the end you put toward the table, okay? You want to make sure that you're, by this time you would have already removed the blocks here, but I'm just not doing that today. But those wouldn't be flopping around. These little blocks would be gone. Okay, but you turn it up on the side. Now I do one full shot of the whole thing. And that way, if you needed to zoom in later and figure out where a wire was, that's why you're doing this, so you can find out, oh, where did I cut that wire? Or sometimes the wires just fall off and you don't know where they were. So you always want to capture this before you start messing around in there. But I do the far back shot. And then I do close-up shots of quarters. So I do a quarter here, I do a quarter here, a quarter here, and a quarter here. And then I start doing and I'm not bringing my lights in here, I should have. But I've got these little lights that are awesome. We got them at IKEA. But they just have a little thing, and you can bend them any way you want. You can get right up in there while you're working. But anyway, I take a close-up, and I do it where I can see most of the wires coming off the pins. So I'm not lining up right here with this camera, but you get over each tube. I try to take a snapshot, a picture, and I just make an album for these pictures on my phone. Anyway, and I try to get a snapshot of every tube socket. If there's something like this that's coming across, it's kind of blocking you, you can slide them one way or the other, and that way you can see the wires that's coming off the pins and where they're going. I also take a picture of any terminal strips that you might have. And I got another one of these lights over here, but I didn't want it in the way of my camera, but I will do it. Anyway, like if that's a terminal strip right there, I want to see where those wires go, you know. And it does help you later on. But I'll go right through each one of these and take a picture of my switches. Get this back out of my way now. I'll take a picture of my switches so I can see where the wires are coming and going on the switches. If there's anything on the back wall, I take a picture of that so you can see where your trimmers and where your antenna coils and all that RF coils go. You can go down here and your main switch, you want to try to take a picture, especially of these back ends right here. Try to get that in the picture, get all these front sides in the picture, get your antenna coil in the picture, and the trimmers for that. This is I think that's the wave trap coil right there. So you want to make sure you get that, and then this is where your power comes in down here. Anytime you see one of these big black guys, that's usually 1,000-volt capacitor that you really need to replace those with a X1Y2 capacitor. It's like a little blue capacitors. But anyway, then you finish taking all the pictures of your sockets. Now you're not going to get some places it is kind of crowded wiring, and you're not going to see everything like that one right there. There's a socket that's up under this switch. I don't even know if you can see it on my camera, but it sits, I get my finger in here, it sits way back underneath that switch. There's one socket that's kind of in a rough place, and then there's a coil that sits right up in there, more than likely the oscillator coil. So there is a little bit tightness here, but you notice overall though, for somebody just starting out, look how much room you got in here. You can lay your whole hand up in here. And even in here, there's wires going across, but you can get your whole hand in there. The only place that's tight is those two places right there. And it makes it real easy for somebody learning to do that. The spring system that I was talking about, this is the other half of the spring, and you can see it kind of allows, like if somebody bumps the cabinet, then it allows that to kind of be like a shock absorber for that bump on your radio. So that's kind of neat. I'm not going to go into depth on what's in here yet, but I will, you know, and I want to make sure we take a picture of the can dome up here too. This is the can dome resistor I pointed out on that other one. This is something you want to always get a picture of too, to see where your wires go on the can dome. Remember, one end of the can dome is high voltage, the other end is zero, or close to zero. But basically, you got to figure out which end is your high voltage when we get into it. Now, the big thing that we need to do next is what I do before I even start on the radio is I verify that my transformer is okay. So we're gonna, on the next section here, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to put this one on hold. All right, before we check our transformer, I'm going to give you just a little bit on the anatomy of a transformer, so you can kind of familiarize yourself under here, because these kind of things are important to know when you're doing this. The reason we're doing this on our checkout, when you do your checkout, this is not actually recapping or doing anything else. This is just making sure, are we going to continue with this radio? Because if this is bad, it might stop you from totally doing the radio, because the radio, sometimes these radios aren't worth $100. Well, you're going to spend almost that on this transformer replacement. But a little bit on the anatomy of a transformer. When you're looking at, okay, say I didn't have these tags on here, and I've got a bunch out there that don't. First thing you're going to identify on here is, you see these have what they call stranded wires. There's like a bunch of strands, and they twist together, and normally they're soldered, you know, but they're little wires that are all stranded together. And then this has a big thick copper wire like that. There's one over here that has a big thick, and these are stranded, okay? So you're saying, okay, what's the difference? And when you see a thick wire like this, you automatically know that wire is going to carry high amps. So the next question you got to run through your head is, high amps means low voltage, right? Most of the time. So high amps over here, they have the thick wire to be able to handle that high amps. Well, and also sometimes these are a lot thicker. These are almost the same as the other ones normally, but normally these are real fat. And but you can already tell, and what I just want to bottom line on this, look at a transformer. If you see these thick solid copper wires, that's your filaments. They light your tube, and I'll go over the filaments in a minute. But when you have a tube that lights up, and I'm not going to teach tube theory, but I will teach you the basics of a tube, how it works. But the filament is basically like the fire that's underneath it's like the heater that's underneath your frying pan. Okay, so it's basically what gets hot, and it lights that frying pan. You know, it warms up the frying pan, basically, in just a simple way of thinking of it. But these, you got to watch out, because with the high amps, you know, I said before in another video that these high amps can kill you. So these are the one, you know, you got to really watch yourself around these wires when you see the big thick copper like that. But you automatically know that these two wires then are filament wires, and they're coming out of the same hole, and most time they'll be twisted together, and that's to keep the noise down on your line. You'll have basically your two sides of that wire, you know. So like a regular cord in a house, you're going to have two wires. You have your hot, your neutral. Well, this is similar. And you have your two sides to it. Well, they usually spin them together, but even if they're not spinning together, they're going to be coming out most likely out of the same bottom part of this. So you know that that's one filament line, and then this is the other filament line. Okay, so now we just got to figure out which filament line does it go to. Okay, you have two filament lines in most of these radios, and the Zenith. You have a filament for the rectifier, and I'll show you where that's at here in a minute. But you have to light the pilot on the rectifier tube to even get the radio to work. And then you got a filament on all the rest of the tubes, and they run out to all the other tubes. And the rectifier most of the time is a 5-volt winding. So one of these is a 5-volt winding, And then the other tubes, most of the time, now not on the real old radios, they have whole different voltages, but on these this era of radio, most of them have 6.3 windings to go to the rest of the tubes. So 6.3 volts on one and 5 volts on the other. So now how do we know which one's which? Well, most of the time, and like I say, there are variations, but most of the time, the windings will come out together for where they're going. So if you notice right here, there's 3 wires that are together, and I'm going to have to stop here in a minute and print off our schematic so you can kind of see that. But the 3 windings, you have on the second side of that, you have your 5-volt winding, and then you have a winding going into the rectifier. So you know that if you have 3 wires coming out together, you probably have either side of that winding, plus you have a center tap. And that center tap, well, that tells me then that this is probably the 5-volt winding on this side because they're coming out here together. And more than likely, this is my 5-volt winding from a rectifier, and then this is my other wires from a rectifier to give me my high voltage. Okay, and then this side is, if it's coming out here, I have to come into the transformer to give it power. Well, you have to have a primary, and if my voltage, or my ohms, if I test it, it's gonna show kind of a low amount of ohms. When it shows low amount of ohms, it's more than likely my primary. This is what feeds this whole transformer. That comes in from your line cord on the wall, and then that leaves just a 6.3 going out to all the other tubes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put my multimeter, and how you use I'm not going to go into depth on that, but for this particular project, when you turn your multimeter on, and I bought an auto ranging one, which I think starting out, you might do just till you don't have to worry about learning that too, because you can actually range these yourself. But if you buy an auto ranging, it'll range it for you. Learn that later on maybe, but right now, just let that do the work for you, and then put that into one of your side projects so you learn how to use a multimeter that's not auto ranging, because you do need to know that. But right now, for today's use, see, I put it on auto range. And this is set on ohms, and that's what the little ohm symbol is right there on the top. That's my ohms. It looks like a little horseshoe. Just put that on ohms, okay? Okay, sorry about that. I had a bad connection somewhere, but as you can see, it's showing a real low ohms on that. If I go to this other side, this is my primary where it comes into the radio. I'm learning the fact that this is very hard to do when holding a camera, but I'll learn how to do that. Anyway, so see, that's 11.3 ohms. That's your primary, and that's about right. It goes from 9 to 15. You know, usually if it's a primary, it's not down like these are, where that one was like a 3. It's going to be somewhere but in the low teens. Then here's what told me that this was my high voltage winding, because you're going to be probably 300 or 400 ohms on this one. So you always have your longer wires and then your shorter one. So you go on your longer wires, and I should be able to connect onto that. All right, sorry about all the fumbling. And as you can see, it's 356 ohms. Well, then if you go to the center tap, which is the shorter one, you take one side and go to the center tap, it should be close to half of that, okay? And then you switch to the other side from that to the center tap, and it should be the other half of that. And that tells you that you got a good center tap, you have a good center tap, and you have a good high voltage winding, and then that's your filament for your 5 volts. So now we've kind of identified what we're going to do inside the radio now, okay? So I'm going to show you roughly where that's at. Okay, well, first we have to figure out a rectifier tube is the first place that when this comes in off the line, that the first place it's going to go is to the switch to turn it on, and then it's going to go back in that transformer. And so when it goes in that transformer, it goes into this primary winding and goes inside this transformer, okay? When it goes in that transformer, then it will come out to the rectifier as the very first tube it gets to. So we're going to tip this back down, and I'm going to show you where that's at. The rectifier tube, most of the time, is going to be somewhere near the transformer, okay? Not always, but most of the time. So when you pull these tubes out, you want to make sure you wiggle them like that. You do it in a circle, because if not, you'll break that off down there. The glass where it meets the thing, because these tubes a lot of times they'll rust in, and I'll get a better shot of that. All right, so I'm wiggling it as a circle and I'm pulling up while I'm doing it. Okay, so usually one of these will be your rectifier, and this particular tube is a 6x5. And after a while, you'll learn there's, basic numbers for rectifier tubes, and I'll go over that when we go over the end of the tubes. But that's your rectifier tube. But more than likely, this one may have two. So I'm going to pull this one, because sometimes they'll have twin rectifiers that you come in the door with. And let's look. And sure enough, because those two are sitting there side by side, sure enough, that's a 6x5 there also. So I got twins right there that are the transformer. You can see the other tubes behind her are different. But also on the Zenith, what I love, but you can't really get messed up, because your 6x5s that you got right here, it says it right on top of the thing, so you can not have to try to remember where you took that tube out. If you didn't, what I do is I hold it when I take my pictures, because you're going to take pictures. I hold it like that and then snap a picture if that's not written down on the chassis. And that way you can see the label on the tube, and you can see where it went in the chassis, and it helps you remember how to put it back. Okay. In this case, we don't have to worry about that, because it's written right there on the sockets. Okay. So now we've pulled those two tubes out. All right. The other thing I do is I have this multi-drawer thing, and if I'm working on a radio, I will start a drawer for this radio, and I should label them on the front, but I do it from memory because I've done it so long. So anyway, but you can just write a label on the front with a sticky label, and put on the front there what model number that is for that drawer. That way you know where all your parts are for it, and when you get ready to put it all back together, you can reach down in that drawer and get what you need. And I got it right underneath my table, which makes it a lot easier to reach down and just grab what you need to put that thing back together. All right, so now we know where our rectifier tubes are located. So now we just got to flip it back up. All right, and we notice that underneath, let me see if I can get better lighting in here. Underneath the radio, I have on this particular transformer, I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to get where you can see it. I'm going to get a pointer. On this transformer, okay, here's, back up a little bit. Here's my stick. See, there's a entry point. This is right underneath where the transformer's mounted on. If you look out here, the transformer's mounted there. Right underneath, there's a hole right here. And unlike this one where you have two holes, this one has one hole with everybody coming through, okay? So what we have to do here then is determine all these wires where they're going, okay? So we want to look at our rectifiers. We know that's the two sockets that are right above this socket, and that socket that's right above those two, okay? So then we have to learn how to look at a tube socket. So I'm going to put this on hold for 2 seconds, and I'm going to try to get that broke down for you, okay? I got a blank socket here. This is an old one I took out. But what they have on the bottom of these sockets, okay, is you have what they call a key. Trying to get where it stays in focus. See that little notch right there in the center hole? Those are notches that are on the side of the tubes. See if I can get a tube here and show you. There's a little edge on the side of the tube right there, and that little edge slides down that notch. Well, that notch is important for you because you can count your holes. All right. So on the right side of the notch And when you're looking from the bottom of the chassis, not looking down from the top, but on underneath, when you're looking at it, you count your pins clockwise. So this is pin 1. See my notches right there. Pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, pin 4, pin 5. And yes, if there's one missing, that's pin 6, that's pin 7, that's pin 8. So this is an 8-pin socket. Okay. Well, let's just see how well that matches our sockets in here. Okay. So let's see if I can get lined up with my camera. I don't know why I can't get this camera lined up. All right. So, all right, there's our notch. Okay. And right off the bat, pin 1 is not even there. But that's pin 1. That's pin 2. That's pin 3. That's pin 4. That's pin 5. That's pin 6. Pin 7. Pin 8. So I've got a pin 8 just like we're looking at down here. Okay. All right. So now we got to figure out what pins do what. All right. So I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. This is one of my favorite manuals out there. These manuals cover a lot of there's got a lot of good reading, but then it starts out numerically in order, like with your 1-volt tubes, and then goes right on up, all the way up to your tubes. But it shows you the information on each tube. It actually shows the pins on tubes. Okay, so what we're going to do, what I did is I took this book, and forgive me, Lord, for doing this, but I had them take it apart. I went to the print shop, and I had them put it on a spiral thing. I didn't take it apart because I had one of those spiral bound ones from the RCA. But anyway, I had them lay them out flat so I could have just a flip book, and it makes it a lot easier than standing there trying to hold that book open because it keeps wanting to close on you. And this way I could flip to the tube that I needed, and it makes it a whole lot easier. So I have this off my left side, and I always flip over here, and I always can look at what I need. Okay. Now we looked at those tubes, the 2 tubes that we took out of here, and they were a 6x5. Okay. 6x5. There it is. Okay. All right. So the tubes we took out is a 6x5. Well, this goes in numerical order. The first number on the tube is your voltage. So this is a 5-volt tube. All right, so we're in the wrong thing, so we just go till we see just 6. And then the next letter is alphabetical, so we don't want an A, we need the opposite in the alphabet. So we're going to go clear down. We don't get in the 7-volt tubes. We're going to get back into the 6-volt tubes. Got to figure out where we're at. Okay, that's 6SK7. And so we're going to keep flipping here. Getting close, 6x4. Where's our 6x5? And look, right there, 6x5. Okay, so now it tells us on the 6x5, and what this means, 6x5 GT means glass tube, and that's what we've got, a glass tube, okay? So then it tells us what our pin numbers are, okay? So our filaments, and while we're here, I'm just going to describe this to you. Okay, the best way for me to remember this, and how I remembered it, I think it was John from Arkansas that said it like this, but this bottom part right here is your flame. All right, you're hooked on pins 2 and 7, and that's your filament that we talked about. This 5-volt filament. One is hooked on 2 and one is hooked on 7. Okay, so that's your flame, and that heats the fire. Well, this is your frying pan right here. Okay. And basically, you're heating this frying pan up. This gets hot, this gets warm, and when this gets warm, the electrons start boiling off of it, okay? And they start boiling off. Well, these plates, because this is all low voltage, remember? So these plates, you feed in high voltage to these plates, and this is your plates up here, all right? And when you get high voltage and those electrons see that high voltage, that negative wants to go up there, so your electrons will boil up to these plates, and that's what makes the tube go active. All right, well, what we're doing now is just verifying that our wires are connected to the right spot and they have continuity to that spot. Okay, so we know that our plates are on 3 and 5 and our filaments on 2 and 7. Okay, this is our plates. Remember I told you this is a high voltage, so these are 3 and 5. and then these are on 2 and 7. So let's go find that in the radio real quick, and let's see if that's true. Okay, so I'm going to get my pieces ready again here. I don't know why I threw that back like that. Okay, and what I do is I just clip onto the end of my leads off of my fluke multimeter, and now we're going to count. Remember how we counted? Okay, we're going to get on that one tube that we can see really good. All right, if you get one of these ohmed out, the other one's just auto connected to it, like the wire will go into it, but they just have these two connected together. They're slaved together. So if you just get one ohmed out, you know it's right. All right, and I'm sorry about I'm bouncing all over the place here. Let me get this thing stable. All right, so remember we said 2 and 7. So our first pin, that's pin 1, because there's a little notch. So that's pin 1, that hole there, and then this is pin 2. So we need to clip one of them on there. I want you to notice too, see the thickness of that wire? So you know the other thickness of the wire is right down here. Also, I mean, that's another way to not have to count pins, but we count all the way around, and this is pin 7, because pin 8 is right before the notch again. And I'm not even on my thing. Okay, so we want to go on pin 7 right there. Okay, so we're going to get the other one. All right, now we're on 2 and 7. So we look up here. What do we have? I told you it's going to be real low ohms. That is good. Real low ohms. We know that we have a good, solid filament winding, 5-volt winding going to those rectifier tubes. That's a win. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we got to do the other two over here on this. Is for the plates is 3 and 5. So let's count up. We're going to go, if I can get my focus back here again. Okay. Pins 1, 2, 3. So this is pins 3 right here. So that's going to be one side of your plate. Okay. Okay. And what they did is 3 and 5 are slaved together. They have, as you can see, if you count 3 and then 4 and then 5, they're already hooked together. So we don't even need to do that. What we need to do, because they hook the two tubes together, so they put the other side over on 3 on the other one. That's how they managed this radio. I'm trying to get these wires out of your way so you can see, and the cobwebs. Okay, maybe I'm trying to get it in the picture, but I'm not doing good. Okay, so what they did is they went to pin 3 on each of the tubes. It really don't matter, as long as you go between 3 and 5. You could actually clip right onto that wire that goes between them, like I just did. And then when you look over here, we have 172 ohms. That's a good thing, okay? Now, most of these radios, most of them, they go to ground on the center tap. And maybe I can show you that. Yeah, here's a good example. This is not this radio, but I can show you what I'm saying. This was your primary winding coming in. This is that big high voltage. When you see a lot of coils, that means it's going to be high voltage. And then this is our center tap. That little thing's going to ground, okay? So most of the time, you can just take one side off of this. And remember, ground in one of these old radios, most of the time, is your chassis. So just put it over on the chassis. And it should be half of our other amount. So if it's not, then that goes elsewhere, okay? Which on this particular radio, it probably goes up here to the candom, okay, the other side. And I don't know which end or how that goes, but we'll just try to find it. All right, get back onto that. Well, I'll have to actually get the schematic printed off to find out exactly where that center tap goes on this one. But you have to find the center tap, and that way you'll find out what's half of that. So half of that 173, so it should, be, 70 something. I mean, 80 something. Anyway, bottom line, that's how you test your transformer. Bottom line, that I know that I've got a good transformer on that side of the transformer. So the high voltage winding and on the rectifier side, I have a good transformer. Okay. Now the next thing you can do, and the filament voltage, because we've already checked this side now. We've checked this part and that part, so we know that all works now. So now we're checking on our radio the filament side, and remember that goes to all the tubes. So we just can pick one of the tubes, and we should be able to let's get one we can see real easy up here, and we'll just pull it out. All right, let's see what tube we got. Okay, get in here under the light. And knowing my luck, it won't have the numbers. A lot of them have the numbers rubbed off the side. All right, so we're going to look on the chassis itself. Let me pull this back. Okay, it says it right here. It's a 6V6, okay? So what we're going to do is go back into our book here, and we're going to go to 6V6, or 6V6, and all we're looking for is the filament. That's always the bottom part on the picture here. So it's the one that looks like the little, I'm sorry, get it lined up here. Looks like the little V, and that's pins 2 and pin 7. You can see where the wires go out to it, okay? So we're looking at pins 2 and pin 7. That way we're going to test the filament winding over here. All right, so pins 2 and pin 7. All right, let me point it out here, that way I don't mess up. Okay, pin 2 is right there. You can't see the notch. Pin 2 is right there. I mean, pin 1's right there, pin 2 is right there, that one. Okay, so I'm going to hook a clip onto that. And then pin 7 is 2 back from the notch. It's just easier to do it that way. The notch, that'd be 8, that'd be 7. So we're going to clip onto that one. I got wires right in the way. Okay, so now I'm clipped on pins 2 and pin 7 of that tube, 6V6, all right? So let's look over here. Remember again, real low ohms, but you got ohms. It's not OL, and that's what you don't want is the OL. All right, so that's a good thing. That means our filament winding on that side is good. So that means all these tubes are getting voltage when we turn this thing on, okay? So that means these two guys, the rectifier tubes, are getting their voltage, and that means all the rest of the tubes are getting their voltage. So the only thing left we got to check is our primary winding. The primary is a little harder to figure out because it jumps off to the switch first, okay? But to me, the best place to do that is you find your switch, which is on the back of this spindle right here. It's just like the example we used in the first few videos, and it's always on the back side, and there's usually just 2 connections back here, okay? Well, you got to find the one of those 2 that goes into the transformer, into that hole down there, what we were pointing at. So we're going to follow this, and these are spiraled too because that's AC, and anytime you see AC, they'll spiral the wires. One of these wires goes into the transformer, and one of them goes over here to the plug where the wire comes in. So the one that goes into the transformer is the one you're looking for, and that's who you would clip on the switch, okay? That checks that one. Now, with the other box, when it comes in off the line, because it's your neutral, it'll go straight into the transformer. So you look at that one, and that one's right here. I don't know if you can, I'm doing a horrible job with this camera. But basically, when we come in that back door with that cord I cut off, the one side don't go to a switch, it just goes straight in, and you can see where it is going straight into the transformer from right where it comes off the line cord. So we clip onto that one for the other side. All right. So basically what we're doing is we're going neutral, goes straight into the transformer. The other one goes up to the switch and then comes back to the transformer. And it's going up to the switch right here and then going back down the transformer. We want to catch it after it's past the switch, because that way you eliminate the switch being, you know, it might be totally faulty or whatever, but we're just checking the transformer right now. So we're going to eliminate that. So let's look over here, and we should get low voltage, kind of like you did on your primary. So I told you it'd be anywhere from, you know, usually it's around 9 to 14, but this one's a little bit lower, it's 6. So still good. Still plenty good. This primary on the transformer. So what we just checked there, we checked the plug side. We checked after the switch. We put it right here after the switch, and then right here where you first came in on line cord, we checked this coil here. So we've already checked this coil. We've checked this coil. We've checked these heater coils that go out to all your light bulbs and your heaters for your tubes, and then we checked the low voltage winding going into your rectifier tube. Okay, so we've checked everything related to this this power side. You get past that, you've got a good transformer, and it makes you feel good to know that, hey, yeah, I'm going to start working on this radio. So I already feel good about this radio. It's got a lot of issues. I can see a lot of issues, but as far as high dollar issues, I don't see a lot of them. The biggest problem I see with this one is the dial cord is really gone, and those are a pain to change out, but we will figure that out when we get to it. There is a book on how to rewind dial cord. Now, Zenith's really easy. It's pretty much just a straight shot, but yeah, it's not fun dealing with those. So there's issues in this radio, but it's definitely a doable radio, and that's what I wanted to find out today. This is going to be our going forward moment. We've verified all the windings on the transformer. All these windings that are on our transformer and this radio are good, and we're going to continue on the next video. We'll start our thing by showing you how to get your schematics for it, and then we're going to be able to actually look at this radio schematics and kind of see, you know, how they fare out, and then we know what we start doing to start marking our schematics and track our progress through the radio. You always want to start with the power side. The next thing that we'll be checking after we get our schematic is all these other coils, because these coils are sometimes showstoppers too. Like, all these coils need to be checked out before we really proceed with changing out caps or anything like that. Because, you know, if some of these coils are bad, it's hard to find coils, you know, unless you got a parked chassis somewhere, you know, like that. I mean, how would you know how to change that out? So, and there's one right there we got to check, and there's just a lot of things we need to still check on this radio. There's a coil right up in here, and we're going to check all those windings on that. So if you have any questions, make sure that you reach out and ask your questions. I will do my best to try to answer as many as I can. Like I said, I'm working a full-time job, so but I will try to read everything and get those questions answered as needed. I know I did a horrible job on filming, but that'll get better over time. I'm learning that where you think you're aiming the camera, you're not. You have to hold it off sideways to get your camera lined up. So I'm going to have to get used to that. Once I do, we'll get better at it each time, and we'll grow on this together. Hopefully I can convey what's going through my head, and hopefully I don't miss things. I'm trying so hard not to use terminology that, you know, that would, or just gloss over something, you know, that would make you think, what did he say? I don't want to do that, because I used to do that when I was watching videos. I think, what did he just say? And it's easy to do. And when you do it every day, you don't even think about it, you know. But I'm trying to think of every little thing that I have to think of to try to help you to not have to struggle. I do want to be your helper, and hopefully I can bring you along with me. All right, thanks for your time today. I want to thank you for watching today. I know that I will get better at what I do, but I know that there's a lot of stuff there in that little short period of time. I wanted to at least get to the point where we have it out of the chassis and we kind of have it analyzed a little bit. That way when we start on segments, it'll be a little bit easier for us to just take one item at a time and look at it. But today I kind of had to get us to that point to where we have it sitting on the bench. We've already made sure we're going to do it, and now that we're going to do it, we're ready to go. I don't want to take, this video has already been long enough, so I don't want to take any more time, but I do want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and tell your friends about us, and hopefully we'll get better at it, and I'll make sure that I get questions answered so we can not talk down to you, but to bring you along with us. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.